that didn't work for me.
Amy, how did you find carnivore?
I found carnivore by chance, although I'd heard of it when I did paleo about a decade ago. Uh, my favorite, Amber O'Hearn, used to come into a little site, Paleo Hacks, and she would say, "Why not just meat? Why don't we eat just meat?" And people would ridicule her. Um, anyway, I was always intrigued by her. She's quiet, unassuming, but very stalwart in her insistence that we should just eat meat. And a decade later, well, 8 years later, um, I I had gotten a physical, and I got the physical because I noticed I was losing hair. So um, vanity always makes us go to the doctor, it seems. And so I did go to the doctor. I got blood work done, and then I got a call, and it was the call, please come in and talk to the doctor about your blood work, not your blood work's fine, we'll see you next year. So I thought, oh, great. So I went in and she said to me, Amy, you have blood work of a 90-year-old woman. What is going on? And so I said, I have no idea. Um, and at the end of all of the testing, it turned out I had stage 3 kidney disease. And then I also had a cardiophrenic fat pad around my heart, um, high platelet count, prediabetes, and a myriad of other things, fatty liver. So she started to have me come in every 3 weeks. My numbers got worse, and eventually I started to get a little desperate. Um, so I started to research, and I found this guy on the internet who looked like a dad, looked like an accountant. He wasn't an influencer or not flashy in any way at all. And he was claiming that he had healed his kidneys with ribeyes, and he had stage 4. And so I thought, well, this guy seems pretty trustworthy. He's not trying to make a buck on me. He's just normal guy. So I thought, well, I can eat ribeyes. So I started eating ribeyes, and I cooked them very poorly. Um, I didn't really like eating them, but I started eating them, and my appetite left, especially my tremendous sugar addiction. So at that time, I was pretty much a workaholic, and I'd work as much as they would let me. Um, and to keep myself going, I would just eat sugar all day long. And so I started these ribeyes, and my numbers only very incrementally improved. So I continued to research, and my doctors never really said anything about my diet. They were basically just waiting until I got to stage 4 to start dialysis. So I kept researching. I found another couple people who had used fasting to heal their kidney disease. You may have heard of Cole Robinson, kind of a goofy, crazy guy. He was one of them, and then the other one was a pretty normal person. And no offense, Cole Robinson, but you are goofy and crazy. I thought, well, I'll give this a shot as well. So I joined Dr. Jason Fung's little private group. It was like $30 a month. And I learned how to fast. And I went to the meetings, and I fasted very poorly. I was not happy. I was a terrible faster. I struggled to do 24-hour fasts. I think I did one 3-day fast, a couple 48-hour fasts. I didn't like it. I was pretty miserable, but my numbers improved significantly. And so I asked my doctor if it could hold off on testing for a little bit to try some stuff out. And she said, okay, your numbers are moving in the right direction. We'll wait. Well, my numbers kept improving. Um, I tried some dry fasting. I kept eating the ribeyes. I was barely eating anything. I could barely get any ribeye in. I ate a little bit of butter. I didn't know anything about all the other carnivore options that were available to me because I was only listening to the accountant dad and Dr. Jason Funk. So it took 9 months, and I completely reversed my kidney disease. The only lasting thing I still have today is I've got a low tolerance for potassium. So I can't really filter potassium very well. And it was great. And during that time frame, I had things that I felt very fatigued. I felt not very bright. I couldn't think clearly. It's kind of a feeling like when your kidneys aren't filtering everything, it's a feeling of almost like haziness, constant haziness. I didn't walk very well. I had a gait, kind of drug one foot behind me. Well, this was all still there even when my numbers improved, and then it slowly got better. The day that my doctor cleared me from getting testing, she said, "You just get regular testing like a regular person now." Um, I was at my desk working, and the whole time that I had been healing my kidneys, there was a little Halloween sized bag of gummy bears. And when I was eating sugar, uh, I would eat just a lot of, like, I always say I'm one Twizzler away, because anything chewy. So I had the gummy bears in my hand, and I thought, should I eat these gummy bears? And I did eat the gummy bears, and it took another 9 months to gain back the measly 12 pounds I had lost and 30 pounds more. So here I was then, trying to figure out how I got there. I had tried to restart carnivore so many times. I couldn't stay on it. I had tried to fast. I couldn't do it, couldn't pull it off. And now here I was tipping over 200 pounds at 5'3", thinking this is going to end up showing on my blood work. And I had to make a decision. I did pretty much decide if I wanted to live or I wanted to die. Um, and I decided I wanted to be here for my two teenage girls. I wanted to be here to help take care of my parents and my aunt as they aged. I didn't really want to be here for myself. I mean, I I still think about this a lot, that my decision to do all that really wasn't based on that I wanted to be here. It was based on I wanted my kids to know I was here. And so I made the decision to restart carnivore. That was in July, and I restarted carnivore August 1. I made a few changes to make it more palatable for me, to make it something I could stick with for a time. In the first 3 months, I just really struggled. I didn't do any fasting. I ate every carnivore food. Um, Occasionally, I'd have some pistachios, but other than that, I didn't really cheat. But I still had tremendous sugar cravings. And in fact, when I would eat a meal, my sugar cravings would come on the worst. Now I know that that was just the way my brain had adjusted to be more like a cocaine addict than a regular brain. And as soon as I would put something in my mouth, it would think, okay, time for your sugar hit. You had savory, now it's time for sweet. And it was very intense. And so I thought I'll just eat fat. So I started eating cream cheese after every meal, like up to a half of a block. About every single day for 3.5 months, I had a block and a half of cream cheese throughout the day. Every time I had a sugar craving, I ended up losing 18 pounds in 2 weeks, mostly water and inflammation. And then I didn't lose anything else for about 3 months. But I made it through that transition time. And that time I've been able to put together enough days that I'm about 2.5 years carnivore now. But since that time, I've really learned about who I am as a carnivore, what works for me. I've had the opportunity to work with other carnivores and learn their struggles. And as a result, it's kept me carnivore. I think that interacting with other people struggling is what keeps me carnivore.
Talking to people like this every day and just hearing different stories, I find that it's a really good tool to, it's not even motivation, it's just like there's other people going through this too. And it just
Yeah,
helps to keep you on track and helps to keep you focused. And when you have that little twinge, like, oh, I could just do this, this treat or whatever, it's like, no, what's that really going to do to me?
yeah, yeah. And for me, it was that little handful of gummy bears sent me all the way back. Um, and which is why I am not a fan of using your reason, or some people say your why that makes you cry. I'm not a fan for myself of using that to keep me carnivore. It doesn't really work for me. Um, because my why that makes me cry didn't keep me carnivore. I'm a big believer in using the food to keep me carnivore, um, keeping satiated, trying different techniques, not under eating, using some bridges and crutches if you have to, and some practicing falling off the wagon, um, practicing having something non-carnivore so that you can go right back on carnivore. And so these are the things that have helped me, but my why has never been good enough to keep me carnivore. And I find that even for people who believe their why does keep them carnivore, it's so helpful to use these other tactics so that you don't struggle so much and go back to your cocaine brain.
Mm. I think, yeah, it's a good point that, you do need to have a lot of armory, you do have to have a lot of ways of attacking the problem because ultimately your hormones are going to decide what you're going to do, right? Doesn't matter how much logic, how much reason, whatever, right? So you're fighting back against an extremely powerful primal kind of part of your
Yes,
your body, right? And so yeah, the more artillery you've got, the better.
I agree. I agree. So the way I think about it is I mean, I hear these suggestions, and I'm not completely against them. Like, I'm in Dr. Lisa Wiedemann's group, whom I adore, and she goes into all that, how to not fall into the ditch, what kind of mental, emotional tools to use. And I do think they're helpful. But for me, I've heard people say, brush your teeth every time you get a craving. Go take a walk, distract yourself. My brain has no idea that I'm telling myself I'm distracting myself. It has no idea that that is how I'm trying to get away from my intense sugar craving. But if I put the meat and the fat in my mouth, my brain understands that. And yeah, my brain knows that I'm satiated, that I'm safe. I'm not running from a predator. I have shelter. There's plenty of food. There's no drought and famine. And that is when my brain is going to say to me, all right, um, no reason to hit you with some cortisol. And I know that you have plenty of food. So go ahead and eat, put your body's safe. And it is then, I believe, that we start to heal and we're able to overcome our cravings. But until you get to that point, if you're just trying to use your brain and you're just trying to use discipline and character, I'm not a fan of using character. People who fall off the wagon on carnivore are not bad people. They just probably need to eat more food.
Yeah. And yeah, it's important. It's very important for those people that fall off the wagon, of which I've got more than 20 years experience of doing. Is like that they
You're an
have to get,
expert.
they, yeah, I am an expert at falling off, not so much on getting back on, but
Yeah,
yeah, they have to understand that one of the most important things is not to focus on the falling off. It's the get back on, because
yeah,
that repetitive action of getting back on is kind of the thing that almost it's like a wiring that, okay, well, you know it doesn't mean the end of the world that I've had that drink, or I've had that
right,
cake, or whatever.
right.
It's
I
I've
agree.
just got to keep moving forward.
I agree. And I I have really noticed I haven't been in, I never did like Weight Watchers or anything like that. But I notice people are so hard on themselves um when this happens, and community of course helps, but a normal person who, for example, is driving on a mountain road. I live in Colorado with a lot of mountains. You drive on a mountain road, it goes straight down. And a normal person might be driving and say, I could drive off the side of the road. And then a normal person's brain will say, be careful. And then go back to thinking about something else or whatever. But an obsessive brain, the kind of brain that I have, might look over the side of the road and think, I'm going to drive over the side of the road. And then start to obsess and think, oh my gosh, picture it, play the whole thing out. And then at that moment, my stress hits. And in order to get rid of the stress, I would eat. That was my stress reliever. And so then what I ask people to do, what has worked for me is instead of doing something compulsive, like cure my stress with some food, I try to expose myself to it, allow myself to feel it for a little bit. And then I try to use a casual statement, and I'll say something after I've experienced the stress. I'll say something to myself like, hey, Amy, maybe you're going to end up driving over the side of the road, or maybe you're going to end up eating so much sugar that, you ruin your chances at a long life, whatever it may be. And then I'll say, I'm going to go forward. I'm going to eat some meat and some fat and just see what happens. Because, so my daughter, Mr. Dave Mack, my daughter has OCD, and she had severe OCD from the time she was in kindergarten. And eventually she started doing this type of therapy called exposure therapy. And that is what her therapist had her do. Um, and the way that it worked is it literally, as she practiced these different exercises of feeling the stress, allowing it herself to feel it, and then instead of doing a compulsion, she would say a casual statement. Supposedly, this exposure type of therapy helps retrain the brain so that the brain starts doing that on its own, but you have to practice it. And I have been doing that with myself so that I don't end up in my gummy bear fall off again. And I do ask people to practice that, to try that, to do it on purpose, to pick a food that, not something like Easter candy. That's probably my top tier food, but maybe something like a grain-free chip. Eat it, feel the stress of eating a non-carnivore food. Let yourself sit with it for a while, and then just say, I ate this chip. I may have blown everything, but I'm just going to go ahead and have some meat and fat now and see what happens. So that we don't go into this whole character assassination of ourselves and we start to practice not having that obsession and then a compulsion to get rid of the stress. It's so, especially for people who binge volume eat. Um, I've discovered in coaching people that a lot of people eat their carnivore the way they ate their standard American diet or vegetarian or whatever. I'm a I'm an intravenous drip eater. So I'm a grazer. And that's how I ate SAD diet as well. Um, and I notice people who are volume or bingers, they end up eating carnivore the same way eventually. It's not everybody, but I find that some people will start eating, let's say, salted tallow with 3 bags of pork rinds. And so for those people, I don't think that our standard carnivore diet works as well. I think there's more to it. I think that they fall through the cracks. Um, I also think they don't talk very much about it, at least in my groups. I find that people feel like they should be able to make this work. Like it should be working for them, like it's working for some people are speaking up, healing their autoimmune, losing body fat, cravings are gone. And then you have this subset of people that have this secretive life. And so I really am sophomoric. I don't know what the answers are there, but I'm so interested in finding out because now there's carnivore has been around for a while now, and I just feel like that subset of people still don't have answers in a normal carnivore diet.
So just to think about your situation, um, right now, what's the status of the issues you were facing, and also since you've been doing it from August, what has changed for you in that time? Like, have you got more energy? Is your sleep better? Things like that.
So since I've been last 2.5 years of carnivore, um, I went through different phases. I do believe that I replaced my sugar addiction with lifting weights for a while. Um, for the first 2 years, it's only been recently that stopped fulfilling a stress relief for me, which helped. I mean, endorphins, HGH, everything. Cuter clothes. Who doesn't want cuter clothes? I mean, all those things. Um, and I have also embraced only recently eating a lot higher fat. I'm 52 years old and I believe that my hormones, I want to keep my cycle for as long as I can. And so I've been experimenting with higher fat, a lot higher fat, like triple the fat I was eating before. I never really pushed fat until the last 10 weeks. And in the last 10 weeks, eating the higher fat, the first 5 weeks, I got acne. Um, I stunk like a teenager. My armpits stunk. My hair got very curly again, like it did when I was in high school. I my breasts hurt for 5 weeks straight, and had moved when I lost 75 pounds. Um, the first 2 years of the first 11 months took me 11 months to lose 70 pounds, and then I've lost about 5 since. Um, my cup size went from like a full C down to what I would say a negative A. And so then I ate all this fat, 2 sizes back up from just eating butter and tallow. Um, and then my cycle is alive and well. I do practice intermittent fasting, but I find that if I'm fasting too much, my cycle will go away. So I'm experimenting with this higher fat option. The previous organization that I coached for um, employed a method called priming, and I'm a big fan of it. I believe that it works. However, I think it's very subjective to the individual. I also think that utilizing some fat fasting during the priming phase of nourishing our bodies, not under eating as a carnivore, and especially for women around my age and older, increasing the fat, like Dr. Bright, um, and so many other, Mindy Peltz was not carnivore, but not under eating, and then nourishing our bodies that way. So experimenting with the higher fat, I have enjoyed. I've eaten some weird stuff to get my fat in. Like I like to take tallow and I'll put it in a bowl and then I'll put some cinnamon and some vanilla powder and I eat it like a pudding. It's positively disgusting, but for some reason I like it. It tastes like flavored plastic a little bit to me. But I do that. I drink butter coffee. I drink water and butter and heavy cream. Um, so I'm constantly trying to find ways to basically preserve my youth as much as possible, while at the same time still trying to get some body composition and mental health, be happy, all of that. And people who let me experiment on them and they try higher fat, they try different methods. It's such a it's a bane of the carnivore community, I think, especially long-time carnivores, that we undereat. And so it's very hard if you get palate fatigue or meat aversion, or you fall into a pattern of eating OMADs every day as a carnivore. So I find that to help people get out of that and open their appetites again, they might utilize something like eating 5 bites an hour for a time, and or using like Dr. Lisa. I think it's brilliant. I've used repetitive meals where I eat the same meal till I get sick of it every day, every meal, and then I eat something else. So these types of things, people will try, and it works for some people, and other people have to try different things. But there are a lot of people who are leaders in the carnivore space who are doctors who were never fat, or some women that had issues but not they weren't overweight. A lot of even women doctors. My passion is working with people who are using carnivore as their last resort, like I did. So because it was my last resort and I was a fat girl, I feel like there are so many ways to approach it other than just eating when you're hungry. That didn't work for me. I did have meat aversion. I did have palate fatigue. So I had to come up with these unique ways to get the food in. And I find that many people have those same problems. So I really enjoy voices that speak to that talk about that. And those are the types of people that I listen to, you know. Not to say that the doctors don't have an important voice, but, Dr. Baker, he has never been a fat girl. Okay. Um, he's an advocate for the carnivore diet, coined the carnivore diet. But if you go back, I love carnivore lore, Mr. Dave Mack. I love it. And if you go back and you look at the true origins of the carnivore diet, it began with zeroing in on health community, and also Esme LaFleur, which I'm familiar with from back when I was paleo. I was still trying to combat my obesity. And those people in zeroing in on health who might be kind of seem like they were mean. Okay, they were mean. There were sticklers, no fasting, no artificial sweeteners, use your real name. You can't come in there as Mr. T or whatever. And Charles Washington, who only ate pork, they are the real pioneers of carnivore diet, except they called it zero carb. That's where Dr. Lisa came from, Kelly Hogan, um, and my favorite, Amber O'Hearn. And so when I look at that, they really were trying to get relief for the last resorters. Um, those people were suffering, and they learned to have community together, and they shared their tips with each other. They learned to cook carnivore food, eat carnivore food, and they coveted that method. And I really think there is something to that, because um, people who are carnivore that fall into OMADs, you hear Dr. Chafee say, if you have meat fatigue, meat aversion, just don't eat. And then when you're hungry again, eat steak. Don't eat until you're hungry again for steak. Well, that could be forever. Could be forever. And so I don't think that's the answer. And I think it's because there are a lot of people in the space that haven't had these challenges. So I really enjoy listening to and learning from people who've had those challenges, including the people that I coach who have those challenges right now. And I enjoy trying to figure out how to get them to a spot where they can overcome it.
Day to day, you're eating just intuitively, or you are doing like eating like 5 bites an hour, or how are you working it?
So I did have to do the 5 bites an hour for a long time, when until I got my appetite open a little bit. And then thereafter, I learned how to do some fasting, and I played around with all that. Lost my 75 pounds. Now, um, for example, today I've had about a stick and a half of butter, um, in some heavy cream and hot water, and a little bit of pumpkin pie spice. A few of those. So half stick made up about 3 of those. I also had a 16-ounce ribeye, which I ate in one sitting. I never would have been able to do that before. And then I had about a half a pound of um, beef, ground beef, with a little bit of chorizo seasoning on there, the kind that I buy it from Amazon. And it's what they use to make chorizo sausage. And I put it on my meat, and then a little bit of shredded cheese and some sour cream. Before I go to bed, I'll probably have some tallow, and I'll have a bunch of gelatin. That's how I eat. Tomorrow, I probably won't eat. Um, I'll probably go closer to a fat fast. So tomorrow, I will eat a lot of tallow, both frozen tallow, with maybe some equipped protein powder in it, that I put on parchment paper, and I spread it out. I put the protein, I put it in the freezer, and then I simply take it out and I eat it like a candy bar. Um, I also like to take the tallow and make the tallow pudding. I'll do that with the prime protein, or just cinnamon and vanilla powder, ground up vanilla beans. Um, I do that quite a bit. And then I'll have the butter in the coffee. I haven't graduated to using suet, but I decided that I'm going to give that a shot. I'll also take some cream cheese tomorrow during my fat fast, and I'll cut up maybe like 1 or 2 slices of salami. I'll put a tiny bit of onion powder. I'll mix it up in a bowl and I'll eat it. I'll likely also have probably 4 or 5 egg yolks fried in a bunch of butter. And then the next day, I'll integrate more protein. And I'll do that every other day. That's my protocol right now, pretty much. And I
And
find that it works well.
following that protocol, you're not feeling hungry at any point. You're not like, "Oh, this is awful. I need to eat something," or it's just you feel a twinge like, "Oh, I'm kinda hungry. I'll eat something now."
I do feel hungry. If I don't, so on the fat fasting, I wouldn't say that the right word for me is hunger. It's more of I really want to have some meat. I want something substantial. That's why I'm going to integrate suet and some beef fat trimmings. I tried some of that a while back, about a year ago, and I just didn't like it. I'm currently trying to look for more savory ways to integrate more fat. But yes, on the fat fast days, I'd rather be eating meat most of the day. Um, However, I don't really have the appetite for the fat if I eat too much meat. So I am trying to emphasize the fat. I'm I'm focused on it, but I do get hungry on those days. It's not as bad as a water fast, but it's still there.
And so you are consuming quite a bit of fat. How has that was that ever a problem for you as far as I know if I was eating that much fat, I'd be in the bathroom all the time. Um,
Yes, it
how was that
was.
for you?
So originally, when I became carnivore, I I experienced the diarrhea. So during the time frame where I really got serious, decided that I was going to stick to it. One of the changes that I made at that time, in August, I started using lipase. I had read, I was desperate, always desperate for information. And so I think it was World Carnivore Tribe Facebook site. Somebody said, just use lipase for your diarrhea. So I did. I used the lipase. That was a game changer for me. I didn't have diarrhea. So in the beginning, that's what I did. But when I tripled my fat intake recently, I don't know how graphic you want me to get, Mr. Dave Mack, but I did have diarrhea. It wasn't the same as when I was fat adapting. When I was fat adapting, I tell people, I'm like, don't leave the house without your butt cover. If you're going to walk through the grocery store, the diarrhea is going to show up suddenly, and you better have plan B ready because that's how it goes. However, this was different. It was more that there was so much fat that it would just sit. It would come out and just sit. And that was for probably about 2.5 weeks of the first phase of tripling my fat. And now I can drink hot, any kind of rendered fat, drink hot fat, no problem at all. I really think that I'm truly fat adapted now, and that's why I can digest the fat. I never need anything to help me out.
With the lipase, how do you is that a supplement or how do you take it?
Yeah. So it's an enzyme. So some carnivores will use, for example, like this is the way I think about it. If you're having trouble digesting the fat, then like this has happened to me before. I wake up a couple hours after I went to sleep. I can feel the fat in my belly. I might throw up. That is appropriate to use ox bile, which is an enzyme to help you digest the fat. And then, but if that's not your problem, and your problem is you have diarrhea, the enzyme lipase, some people will use just lipase from like Integrative Therapeutics is a brand that I used, or Lipo Gold. You just take one or two with every meal, and it helps you not have diarrhea. Um, so I think it takes away, people have diarrhea forever when they start carnivore. Um, it's just something that you really don't have to deal with if you just supplement with this naturally occurring enzyme. You just supplement with it and it stops diarrhea.
Oh, interesting. I mean, that certainly when you're first getting started, like for a lot of people, it can get bad enough that you think, "Oh, I think I've made the wrong decision here." So knowing that there's something out there that you can take to help is a big thing.
Yeah, I also found, so some people the lipase never works. And for those people, um, gelatin works great. Uh, so unfortunately, you have to eat a lot of it. But I lost 3/4 of my hair when I had my kidney disease. I lost more hair when I lost my 75 pounds. And anyway, the gelatin has really helped grow my hair back besides eating protein. Um, and so some people who lipase has not worked for, if they start eating gelatin, and you buy some beef gelatin and grass-fed beef gelatin, and you sprinkle it on some cold water to make it bloom, and then you just add some hot water. You can add some electrolyte flavoring if you want to. I like to use the Equip watermelon flavored colostrum, and you just put that in there, and then you can either put it in a casserole dish and then cut it up after it gets cold in the fridge, just like when you used to make jello for your kids or for yourself. And or you can put it in silicone molds. And what I do is I will eat every time I have something to eat or drink, I'll have a couple gelatin squares before and after, like I'm taking a supplement. And so for people who are still having diarrhea, the gelatin coats the inside of the intestine wall. And it's not magic. It just gives the intestine a break so that all those little philia can repopulate and the wall can heal. And I have found that works really well for me. But when you start eating a lot of gelatin, that also will come out in your stool as gelatin. And so you have to pull back a little bit. Um, and and then, some people might want to, like Amber O'Hearn, reincorporated potato when she had trouble with her gut, and she found out by happenstance, but she'd been carnivore for years and years. So I just think that doing something like adding an avocado every day, which I learned from a coach, Becky Niles. Add an avocado a day to see if that stops your diarrhea. There are lots of things that you can do, but the lipase works for most, I think.
So, Amy, how can people reach out to you? How can they get in contact? Do you have a YouTube channel or any other ways of getting in contact?
Yeah, I actually, along with my partner, Dennis Ford, I run a platform in Mighty Networks called Beyond the Bite. And in there, we have community meetings called The Bite, where community members come together and talk to each other. And we basically support each other. We talk about our frustrations. We ask questions of each other. And then we also have people come in that are in the carnivore community to speak and answer questions in the members. It's pretty new. It's only been launched actually 7 days. But yeah, but we have over 100 members already in 7 days, and they're all very active and sweet people. And that's where I've been spending all my time. And then I do, Carnivore Amy is my Instagram, and I do love Instagram, posting there a lot.
Nice. Well, I'll link to those below. Amy, thank you very much for coming on and sharing your experience. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Mr. Dave Mack. I think it's great that you interview normal carnivore people who are sharing all their wisdom.